live. Yeah.
Live. Don't press the buttons.
Oh, sorry,
I am
sorry.
doing the buttons. You screwed the whole thing up. Don't press anything.
Now I know why I never touched that. Live from a Qantas flavored cheese doodle, it's the ESG industry's only weekly woke data podcast featuring analyst Hull Matt Moscardi. Yeah.
We have to talk about Qantas again.
In today's bedazzled ESG necktie called September 27th, 2023, random ESG headlines, an anti-woke roundup from your favorite analyst Hull, and a word from the great Paul Hodgson from S-Gage.
Wow. And why is Paul Hodgson giving us a word again? Because
our show today is being sponsored by S-Gage, your ESG data solutions provider. Although,
yeah, that's right.
I think it was in the contract that I can't speak that quickly when I say the sponsorship. So
you have to say it very slowly.
Sorry.
Is that contractual?
Paul will be stopping by later to talk about gender pay equity. That sounds good. Gender pay equity. Is that a thing?
That sounds like the beginning of a joke.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it today. I don't know about you. I'm out on today.
Yeah, don't say that though. Don't tell the audience that.
I mean, let's get excited. Here we go.
This first story I'm only including because I basically made this prediction, and I just want to point out that how smart I am. Is that we've been pointing out the craziness of the new CEO at Qantas, Vanessa Hudson, apologizing for the misdeeds of the departing CEO, Alan Joyce. And I was suggesting that soon they're going to basically rake her through the coals for this apology. And this headline, latest headline, new Qantas CEO Hudson grilled by lawmakers over a raft of scandals. Vanessa Hudson was grilled, rebuked, and chided by a parliamentary inquiry, right? I knew it was coming. I knew they were going to rip into her for nothing that she did.
Been CEO for 8 minutes. And as we discussed,
yes.
and I think we discussed this either Friday or last week, she makes about half of what the prior CEO made. The contract that she got, like what is the upside for her? I know she's a Qantas lifer, right?
CEO role. It's like becoming the manager of a really crappy baseball team. Sometimes you just got to do it.
Does she ever get to go anywhere and proudly say that she was the CEO of something?
She's got a big turnaround project. Look, she's either a hero or she just continues to be a glass cliffy woman, right? I mean,
but like she has to prove herself again. This is another one of those situations where like a woman needs a PhD and needs a job for 60 years before she gets a shot to be the CEO.
A shot to be a CEO at a company that is crapping the bed.
And then you become
the entire
the
country
CEO
hates
of a company that no one likes, and you then have to prove that you're good at anything, because if in 3 years she hasn't like somehow mystically magically using unicorn powder and Lucky Charms managed to turn this company around from a shit show that it's been for a decade, she hasn't turned it around in like 27 seconds, do shareholders vote her out?
Supposedly, it's even worse, too, because I'm hearing that on top of the fact that they illegally fired 1,700 workers, that they illegally marketed canceled flights, and that they I guess, mismanaged their return to operations after COVID. Supposedly, there's even more, which is why Alan Joyce ran up the hills 2 months early, because he was supposed to step down November 3rd, but he got the hell out of there.
Hey, congrats to Richard Goyder, thoh, for
all right, let's talk about Richard Goyder.
Standing there and doing nothing.
So finally, Australians are listening to our show because we were calling out Richard Goyder vociferously. As it turns out, everyone agrees with us. Rachel Waterhouse, CEO of the Australian Shareholders Association, said in an interview that Chair Richard Goyder ought to step down by the end of the year.
Rachel, join us on the show.
And Qantas pilots are pissed. They actually sent a quote-unquote damning letter calling for Chairman Richard Goyder to step down. And they also claimed that the dude's tone deaf because, as I think you pointed out last week, he took $100,000 pay raise this year.
He did, yeah, that's correct.
There you go.
That's correct. That's actually the sound of Richard Goiter right now.
Laughing to all the way to the bank. I like
that. That was live. That was live footage of Richard Goiter laughing. I do have a question though.
Yeah.
I think we need to get our friend Rachel Allen-Backus back on the show.
Show. Has she ever been on the show?
She's been on the show once.
I don't recall.
Back in the Emma days, she was on the show. So
I don't recall.
But we need to get her back on the show in order to talk about
Qantas.
What's going on. Qantas.
Rachel, if you're listening.
And Rachel Waterhouse, Rachel Allen-Backus, either one of you, if you're listening to the show.
Call my executive assistant and we'll set this up.
Why don't you send a page to my burner
Send
phone.
a damning letter to my executive assistant, and let's get you on the show. All right, moving on. Luckily, I don't have a lot today, Matt. Usually, I have like 45 headlines.
Well, that's okay. I think Paul's actually set up a tent outside, so he's going to be here for a while.
How about this? The president that everybody hates keeps doing cool things. President Biden joins auto workers on picket line in Michigan. Matt, does this surprise you? He's the first sitting president to join a picket line? The first? It's never happened? How's this possible? Never?
I mean, it does. Look,
never.
If we're a bit honest here.
Yeah, let's be a bit honest.
It looks a little like it's very politically.
No, this dude's he's always been pro-union, this guy. He's always.
I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying
he's Amtrak
optics,
Joe. Yeah.
The reason why sitting presidents don't join picket lines is because
that's the reason is because they don't care. Let's be honest. They're not on the side of the workers. They're usually on the side of the CEOs.
They do care very much because the unions can produce votes. So they do care. So it's not that they don't care. It's just that the optics of it often don't look great. Although after he does this, apparently Trump has also announced that he's going to visit Michigan and discuss
because he's definitely pro-worker.
Yeah, I know that Trump should settle it. That should be the end of it. It will be fine now.
How about this in a story that nobody wants to talk about? There's a few stories that nobody wants to talk about for some reason. Lena Khan, the FTC, she brought her antitrust case against Amazon yesterday. The business news doesn't care about that.
I don't think the business. I think actually she's undercut herself with the Microsoft Activision thing. I think when your first big case is a bunch of fucking idiot gamers complaining that one company's going to own one idiot game, and that is a big deal.
It's not just about gaming though. It's about Microsoft's just overall power. No.
I guess with what? Call of Duty? That's the whole.
They have Call of Duty and they have Clippy from Microsoft Word.
I take it back. It's all about Clippy.
JP Morgan Chase settles case over its ties to pedophile Jeffrey Epstein for $75 million, saying it deeply regrets any association with this man. This is one of these weird stories that the business news hasn't really known how to cover properly. They don't really know how to weigh in on this.
Because it's horrible and gross.
And they don't. I think they just don't want to. They don't want to touch it. I suppose. I don't know.
They'll
tell you everything. They'll tell you the type of cereal that Elon Musk eats, but they won't. They don't want to weigh into this one too much.
I will say this. I don't know that. I totally believe it's J.P. Morgan's job to know Jeffrey Epstein was a horrible, disgusting human being.
I thought the point was that it was known already, though.
Sure, but here's what this is the pincer move, right? Because on one hand, you've got authorities saying J.P. Morgan should have taken this into account and known and not dealt with Jeffrey Epstein, and I think J.P. Morgan has a bunch of information that they probably didn't share and is horrible, right? Okay. Yeah. And on the other side, you have the conservatives now saying if you don't give a loan to somebody who strapped themselves in grenades and said they want to blow up, black people, that you're discriminating against them for having weaponry. J.P. Morgan now, they have to know every client and make a decision based on what they know, but also not discriminate against any clients for their religious beliefs or their decisions. I mean, it's really impossible to think that J.P. Morgan is going to get this all right and or all wrong. I don't. So
well, here's the part that bugs me. Yeah.
What bugs me is that I feel a very, very slight 1% sympathy for J.P. Morgan, and that feels uncomfortable to me.
1% doesn't sound like a lot of sympathy. Let's be real.
Well, it's when you're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, it does feel like a lot.
Here's the part that bugs me. JP Morgan also reached a confidential agreement with former executive Jess Staley, who was the CEO of Barclays, and I think he was the head of. He spent 34 years at JP Morgan. He was never CEO there, though, right?
No, he wasn't CEO.
No, but he was.
I
think
he
was the
left
CEO of one of their
because he
investment
got
banks.
passed over. Yeah.
But he resigned amid a regulatory probe into this, I guess Epstein, what they're saying, whether he mischaracterized his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But here's what bugs me, is that JP Morgan reached a confidential agreement with Staley to resolve the firm's claims against him. So again, we're not privy to this information. Despite being a publicly traded company and one of the biggest scandals in corporate history, we don't get to know about this, right? I mean, why tell us?
Yeah, look, I don't like the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing feels like one giant horrible graft. And
can we just stop? Can we just stop confidential agreements at publicly traded corporations? Can we just stop it?
God, wouldn't it be funny if we knew? I want to I have over 5 years. I've very much come over to your side where I want to know their inseam length and I want to know
then you're gonna like our next story, Matt.
I want to know all the things because I feel like it all becomes relevant somehow.
Matt, you're gonna love this next story then. Ready for this one? This is the perfect guy for us. Verizon CEO. We never talk about Verizon CEO. It's a man named Hans Vestberg. Could you even have named him?
I'm already out on him. Yeah.
This is the best ESG data ever.
I will say I
hope
could have
we get
named
access
him.
to this.
I will say I could have named him because they screwed up my wife's phone for anyway.
Well, I hope we can get access to this data. I hope this becomes. I hope that the SEC pushes for this data for all CEOs of publicly traded companies. CEO at Verizon, Hans Vestberg, has been tracking his mood out of 1 to 10 in a spreadsheet every day since 2009.
Whoa!
I want this information. This is like the good game. This is like the CEO good game.
Yeah, what is it? Why isn't that feels very material? I'm sorry.
Yes, the takeaway here is that if he gives himself less than a 3, he decides to work alone that day.
I'm sorry, you can't. What? Wait.
Yeah.
If you're a bricklayer and you're feeling less than a 3, which would probably be every other day.
Well, it's every morning because you're hungover probably every morning.
Because it just feels horrible to spend all day crouched over laying brick. You can't just work alone. That's
here's the scoring. Here's the scoring system. Ready?
Yeah.
1 to 2.
Is this all verified? This
is per CNBC.
Okay.
If you trust CNBC, which I do, because
did they get it direct from him? Is this did he share the spreadsheet?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they shared the spreadsheet, but he shared the scoring method. I think shareholders should know how many days out of the year he's a 1 or a 2, shouldn't they? Here's the methodology. Ready?
Yeah. There's a methodology. Just makes me happy.
1 to 2 means that he was not in the right headspace to work with other people and should stay in his office and work alone.
Wow.
What does that mean? He's either mopey and crying like an emo rock star, or he's angry and he's going to yell at everyone. What do you think that means?
Well, no, it's just it says it's tracking his mood, so it could be any mood, and
mopey or anger.
It's mangry.
3 to 7 is the ideal score, and usually when he's at his best because he was energized and productive. So already I don't understand this CEO. So 3 to 7 is his ideal score?
Look, I think this is epic is what this is, because right now we're constantly talking about how ESG scores don't mean anything, and this guy's taking a score of himself every day with an arbitrary methodology that is actually incredibly useful. And it has meaning.
And to all the prospective clients who are angry at us for attempting to rate individual people at companies like directors and CEOs, they're doing it to themselves. So get over it. Get over it. And finally, the score between 8 to 10 means that he, quote, has so much energy that people get tired of me.
So he's playing the outlier game.
I think he's a little. This guy's a little bipolar, no?
He's saying that whenever you're feeling an outlier,
that's true.
Bad.
I get it.
It could
that's
be
true.
bad.
I respect that.
I like that.
All right, so I have 2 questions related to Hans Vestberg.
Okay.
What do you think his mood was on the day this May when he realized that 30% of shareholders told him that he should not be both CEO and chair? So 30% of shareholders voted against him and said that he should separate the roles of CEO and chair. What do you think his mood was that day?
No, I think you need to flip it. I think if he was a 9, he would have said 70% do want me here.
That's right. That's the correct answer. Or what do you think his mood was on the day when he realized that he gets paid $350,000 a year to sit on BlackRock's board, despite the fact that he doesn't really have to be there in the first place? Matt, there are 15 other directors, and we, including the founder, chair, and CEO, Larry Fink, and we calculated his total influence on that board to be 0.8%.
Yeah, well,
so what do you think how his mood was when he realized that he's getting $350,000 for doing nothing?
That would make me a solid 9. I would be insufferable.
I think you're wrong, because I think he'd be, since 3 to 7 is where he's at his best, I think he'd be in that range. I think he'd be like a 6.
Oh, no. I think he'd be insufferable. I think he'd be like running around high-fiving people.
All right, Hans, if you're listening, reach out. We want you on the show to discuss your
all
spreadsheet.
that data. Hans, join us. I would like talking about that would make my life better. It would make me a 7.
Finally, to bring your mood back down, speaking of rating things, what do you think about these two 2030 headlines? I think 2030 might be the new 2050, Matt.
Oh, I have seen a lot of 2030. This is true.
Let's play a mini good game with these 2030 headlines. Okay. Nissan says it will go all electric by 2030, despite this petrol ban delay going on in the UK, where they're saying that they're postponing its 2030 ban on the sale of new petrol cars to 2035. And by petrol, I mean gas.
Oh. Okay, this sounds nice.
What do you think?
Here's what I like about 2030. The average board member sits on the board for 7 years, which means the newest board member on the Nissan board is still going to have to be there, right? Yeah. Like, won't they have to be there?
I got to say, I like this. 2030 seems like a reasonable goal to me.
That does seem like a reasonable goal. Like good for someone having like 7 years is better than 27, which is where everyone else is setting their goals.
At the same time, France has announced its plan to cut emissions 55% by 2030. Does that sound? Do you like that one? 55% by 2030.
Sure.
Oh, wow. Okay. So your mood is a 6.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm exactly a 6.
I'm done. That's all I got.
That's it. All right. That means it's time for me to give you a short anti-woke roundup. Really, there's one big thing and the one funny thing that I found. First up, conservatives in the House of Morons, that is our House of Representatives in the United States of Moronica. Yeah. They passed 3 sneaky rules out of committee to change ERISA rules.
Okay.
Department of Labor ERISA rules. These are like retirement plans, right?
Doesn't sound good, yeah.
So the headline here is actually not that is more inflammatory than it seems to be. Anti-ESG 401k investing measures advanced by House committee. Okay. Now it seems like when anybody does anything anymore, they just frame it as anti-ESG. It's anti-something else, right? Like it's anti, which is not. It doesn't accomplish a thing. It's just anti-something else. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. What this really hinges on is one word that we've talked about here, but now is like we're really just getting deep into
don't
one
say
word.
It's going to be one of 2 words. Yeah.
It is pecuniary.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be that or materiality. Yeah. I knew it was one of those.
Well, guess what? Materiality's in there, too, so don't worry.
Okay.
The definition from the Trump 2020 Department of Labor rules of a pecuniary thing is a factor that a fiduciary prudently determines is expected to have a material, there's the word material, effect on risk and return of an investment based on appropriate investment horizons consistent with the plan's investment objectives and funding policy pursuant to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So pecuniary, when you look it up, is actually just pertaining to money, okay? Mm-hmm. And a fiduciary is just someone who uses someone else's money and has a duty to that person.
Sure.
And then material, there's also the word prudent in here. There is something called the prudent man theory.
Okay.
And it does say man. It's not women, because I think
all theories started with men.
They assume that women were never prudent, which is the great irony is they're much more prudent.
Women didn't have time to think. They were busy.
I know. They were busy. But here's the gray line of this whole thing, okay? Mm-hmm. These new rules have passed in the House, and effectively they're making you justify any investment that you do that could be not pecuniary. They want you to justify having done.
Oh, God.
They want less proxy voting.
This sounds like new anti-choice rules, really. This sounds like anti-abortion stuff. You have to justify your existence just to breathe.
What we really are at is justification for everything, because they want less proxy voting.
If you're a woman or black, or
it generally is that. Anything that isn't immediately financial, they are actually saying that you shouldn't vote on.
And again, not to belabor a point, but what is and isn't financial is a complete mystery to me.
And because it's whatever you think. In fact, the definition of material financial, according to the Supreme Court, is, quote, a substantial likelihood that the fact would have been viewed by a reasonable investor as having significantly altered the total mix of information made available. Meaning this: if you knew something, it would have changed the decision that you made later on.
Okay.
Can you think of knowing Hans Vestberg's mood definitely would have changed my opinion of a lot of things, right? So you can make a case that anything is material.
Well, again, let's take the departure of BP CEO Bernard Looney, right? It wasn't based on any pecuniary evidence. No, it was just it was based on inappropriate relationships with employees.
Yeah.
So
plural,
according to the new zeitgeist, that shouldn't happen. He shouldn't be fired for that, right? He shouldn't resign for that, right? According to this world that we're talking about,
well, that depends whether I can think of a material cost to.
But that's what I know. But that's where I get lost in all this. Is like everything could eventually be a material cost to a company. Especially. Anyway.
That's correct. You're correct. You're 100% correct. But here's where they get really iffy. They actually want you to have less choices in your 401ks. They are adding transparency rules around something that is an alternative investment in your 401k. So you want to add something that's not typically in your brokerage package. You have to now show this chart that shows how much money you could make under certain scenarios, and say things like making this investment might be bad for your children's health. And the last best one here that they passed, and it was 4 little edits to rules that they passed, is they wanted to add this phrase that they want to add effectively, that as part of choosing your investments, that you cannot preclude, you can't do anything because of race, gender, or religion or national origin. They are trying to add this non-discrimination thing in there, but here's the intended effect.
Tell me.
The effect is, if you want to invest in a fund that focuses on diversity because you think that matters to the outcomes of the company,
you can't do that.
You can't do that anymore, because that now is discriminatory, because you are making an investment based on race or whatever. Also, if I were to buy a Chinese ETF, I think I'm discriminating based on national origin. So now I can't even buy something based on a country.
But that's okay, because we hate the Chinese, right?
Who knows? Or I'm confused what we hate and what we don't hate. Basically, what these rules hurt are impact investors, ladies and black people, anybody who thinks that matters, thinks that using your full talent pool matters, or leveraging talent that is under leveraged or whatever, that you're out. Religious investors actually get hurt, because you can't discriminate based on religion, which means if you bought a fund that was a Catholic fund, doesn't that mean you just discriminated against Jewish funds or Islamic funds, right?
I don't know anymore. I don't know what they're trying to achieve. They've just become trolls. No, I mean, I don't honestly know what is the intended outcome here.
Nobody knows.
That's exactly.
Being
Thank you.
Catholic, pecuniary?
Can I get off of this boat?
Last but not least, it helps humans who plan. It doesn't help. It hurts actually. Humans who plan on living more than 7 years, because they frame this all around like the long term, like the objectives of the portfolio. The portfolio, right? Which a long term investment tends to be more than 7 years, but something pecuniary 7 years out is not necessarily something pecuniary today. And there's a mismatch here, which means if I had to vote on something today, like a report, is that pecuniary for 7 years from now, I would have to prove that, right? Like, so the whole thing's bananas. It does help, ironically, ESG ratings.
Why?
Because all they do is talk about materiality. That's the only thing they talk about anymore. Right? So it helps them, I think, arguably. So, yeah, this is just an FYI that in this country, they want to make sure that you have no choices with what you do.
I was going to say, they basically just they just don't want you to make investment decisions based on what you think should be.
They don't want you to make investment decisions they don't want you to make.
Yeah, they don't want you to. They don't want you to have control over what you want to do, I suppose.
So under these new rules, I'm pretty sure that Hans Vestberg's mood chart would be outlawed, would be banned. You couldn't use it for any reason whatsoever. That's story number one. Story number two here, and this is just for fun as a way to end the show on something other than like a downer. Although Paul's going to talk about downer stuff, I think, next. Is getting angry at stuff we just found out about continued. I don't know if you remember, but we had a segment on this back in, I think, July. Where conservatives have started getting angry at everything they just found out about years and years later.
Yes.
Well, here's the headline. Amidst Taylor Swift rumors, woke Travis Kelce taking a knee during a 2017 game goes viral. So here's what just happened. Conservatives finding out that, and this is on the back of this headline, will Taylor Swift make Travis Kelce woke? So here are your takeaways. Travis Kelce thinks Taylor Swift is hot.
And why is she, but first of all, why is she woke exactly? She's a billionaire. What is woke about her? She's a woman? Is that it?
You know, I think it's pretty much that she's got lady parts that we don't like. But Travis Kelce thinks she's hot. They start maybe dating, maybe just hanging out. Nobody really knows. I don't really care. But as soon as they're linked, there's one picture of Taylor Swift, the largest pop star in the world, and Travis Kelce, a tight end, plays for the American National Football League. He's a superstar in the league.
Ironically, wasn't this the guy that Bud Light used in ads to prove that they're not woke?
Yes,
he's a manly, burly, bearded dude from like one of the most racist teams in the Midwest.
Yeah, so not only that, but the ad is him basically going, like sitting and going, ugh. And that's the whole ad.
Grunting,
right? Grunting. It's the grunting
is the big anti-woke statement. Yeah.
Now the right in this country has gone bananas because Megyn Kelly has said that Kelce is obviously super woke because not only is he
super woke,
because not only is he with Taylor Swift, who is now super woke, he endorsed Bud Light by being in that
he didn't take any money for that. That was pro bono.
And he's pushing the Pfizer vaccine because he was just in a commercial.
Also pro bono.
Yeah.
There's no way he's taking any money from Anheuser-Busch or Pfizer.
And they said because he's taking money, now he's taking money for woke causes. Now it's woke to be capitalist.
I don't know how I feel now. I don't know.
Meanwhile, the merchandise sales for Kelce's jersey after being viewed with Taylor Swift spiked 400%.
Well, yeah, okay. I would think that this is a gold mine for the NFL. No, I mean the amount of female fans that they might be acquiring here just because of this connection.
If you thought being woke was confusing, now it's even more confusing because all you got to do is be seen next to Taylor Swift for 40 seconds, and all of a sudden Taylor Swift has transformed you into a woke social justice warrior in this country. That's all it takes. That's all I got. Let's bring in Paul, and we're gonna wrap this up.
Poor Paul has been sitting on the couch for half hours listening to us.
Just come in. It's your turn now. Here you go.
Hello there. Paul Hodgson with S-Gage Statistic of the Week. And as promised, we are going to look at gender pay equity. Now, SGH collects gender pay equity data from US filings. So while there is comprehensive disclosure of both adjusted and unadjusted pay equity in the UK, what we're looking at is US or worldwide disclosure. And it's pretty vanishingly small. So just to define terms a little bit before we get going here, an adjusted gender pay gap is a gender pay gap that is for same employees, same work rather, whether you're female or male. So it's position equivalent. And an unadjusted gender pay gap discloses what the median or average figure is for all female employees and for all male employees. Now, one of the reasons people are asking for that unadjusted pay gap is that it discloses something about the company's efforts to employ women in senior roles rather than just junior roles. If your pay gap is wide for as an unadjusted calculation, then it shows that there are far more men in better paid and more senior roles than there are women. And that's a piece of information that both shareholders and probably employees would like to know. So we're going to look at this for the whole Russell 3000, and then we're going to compare the Russell 3000 and the S&P 500. So this is the adjusted gender pay gap analysis for either US or worldwide workforces. And the number of companies that are conducting an analysis has been increasing, but haven't disclosed the results. That's 21% in 2023. That's up from 7.4% in 2021. So no analysis conducted, so no disclosure and no analysis is at 65.9% this year, and it was 88.5% in 2021. So things are slowly getting better, but they're just not telling us about them. In terms of analysis actually disclosed for an adjusted gender pay gap, there is 11.6% of the whole Russell 3000 making that disclosure, which is up considerably from 3.6% in 2021. Now, if we're comparing the S&P 500 with the Russell 3000, then there is more disclosure. So we're looking at, for example, analysis conducted but results not disclosed is 28.9% in the S&P 500, whereas it's 21% in the Russell 3000. And adjusted gender pay gap actually disclosed is at 22.9% in the S&P 500 compared to the 11.6% that we saw for the whole Russell 3000. So the only, it's actually less than half of the S&P 500 doesn't conduct any kind of adjusted pay gap analysis at all. So that's that. So let's have a look at the unadjusted pay gap. So for the whole Russell 3000, it's 97% no disclosure, 1.5% disclosure. And for the S&P 500, it's 95.5% no disclosure and 2.4% disclosure. So it's a pretty vanishingly small number of companies, despite all the successful shareholder resolutions calling on companies to do this, and a few high-profile companies agreeing to do this, like Visa, for example, have agreed to make those unadjusted pay gap disclosures. It really has not caught on here at all. And if we're just looking at the S&P 500, there's been a small decrease over time. Just to look at the time sequence here, from 99.2% had no analysis at all in 2021, and it's down to 97% now. So there's some analysis conducted, but results not disclosed, 1.3%, and then the 1.5%, as I said, for the whole Russell 3000 actually disclosing that. So now you would think, for example, that since companies have to actually disclose this information in the UK, by law they have to disclose it in the UK, that companies who are disclosing it in the UK would also include those disclosures in their US filings. But if we look at that and just compare the statistics, only 12.1% of US companies make that disclosure that they've already calculated, that they've already put together for the UK. Only 12.1% of them make that disclosure in the US in 2023. Now, it's up from 6.4% in 2021, but it's still a very, very small number, and actually not that much more than are making the disclosure for all their employees as well. So again, I'm thinking to myself, what are they trying to hide? Just a thought. So this is Paul Hodgson signing off with S-Gage Statistic of the Week.
That was an ominous sign-off.
Yeah.
That was ominous. What are they hiding?
I like the chuckle.
That's Paul Hodgson from S-Gage, your ESG data solutions provider. I am your analyst, Matt Muscardi. That's Damian Rawlis. We are Free Float. Show is also brought to you by freefloatanalytics.com. Honestly, I don't know why you haven't signed up. Like, it seems stupid. At this point, it's just stupid not to already be on there. If you like this show, we'll be back on Friday to wrap the week. Until then, goodbye.